what I do, what I do, da da do, da da do. Here we go. Hi, Darryl. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Awesome. I'm really, really good.
Good.
So, for those of you who don't know, Darryl is our amazing superstar project manager at the Creative Copywriter Agency, which is our agency. And I wanted to have this chat with you today, Darryl, because project managers in marketing agencies or copywriting agencies like ours are one of those key people that the copywriters in our community will be working most with. And I just thought it will be super valuable to chat a little bit about what does taking on a freelance copywriting gig with an agency actually means. So how does a project like that actually plays out? How does the process work? What is expected from a copywriter? And maybe most importantly, what can a freelance copywriter do to ensure that they keep on getting more and more gigs with the same agency? So just so you guys know, we have copywriters that have been working, freelance copywriters who have been working with us for 6-7 years now. So once you win over an agency, you're very likely to keep on winning more and more gigs with them. So we're going to be talking
Definitely.
about what we're looking for from a copywriter today a little bit as well. But before we dive into all of that, I want to give you just a very short overview of the main roles or the main people that you're most likely to work with as freelance copywriters. So within a creative marketing copywriting agency like ours or any other agency, you will mainly be working with project managers like Darryl or with account managers like our own Russell, which I will be talking to in a different time. In some agencies like ours, you will be working with a project manager and an account manager, and we'll go into the differences between these roles in a second. Now, that's working with an agency. When you're working directly with a client or a brand, when you're working with a medium to large company, you're likely to be working with content managers and marketing managers. And when you're working with small local businesses or startups, you'll usually be working directly with the CEO or one of the founders. And we're planning on getting interviews in with people in all of these roles to give you the broadest perspective possible on the different copywriting jobs out there, what they entail, and how you can stand out to make sure that you win these gigs, because that's what we're all here for. But let's go back into project management within an agency, or how we run projects within an agency, which is why we're all here today. So, Darryl, do you want to start by telling us a little bit about what a project manager does? What does it mean to be a project manager?
Cool. So my job is implementation. That means that I plan all the projects from timelines, deadlines, setting up on our project management systems, and assigning tasks. Basically, if it's project related, I'm involved.
Yeah.
I also communicate with clients regarding project plans and task deadlines, and often, most importantly, feedback. And even more importantly, is I deal with the writers on a day-to-day basis.
Cool. So basically, when it comes to a project management, to a project with an agency, it's very likely that the account manager will be the person who kind of finds you through people per hour or whatever platform they find you on, or through your website. But then the day-to-day workings on the project and your day-to-day communication will be with the project manager. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about the differences between what a project manager does and what an account manager does.
Cool. So firstly, I would say I think in people day terms rather than money terms. So I do not do anything with invoicing, money, rates, anything like that. So whereas the account manager owns the commercial success of any project or client account, I own the project success. Mm-hmm. So was the brief met? Did the writer do a good job? Was the client happy? Anything relating to that. Obviously, there's similarities between account manager and a project manager. We obviously both build relationships with the clients, but while the account manager has the overall responsibility for the relationship, I manage the day-to-day running of it and the projects.
Cool. So basically, in the way that it will relate to copywriters or to freelance copywriters, the account manager will usually be the person who finds you and communicates you, kind of offers you the gig, tells you how much you'll get paid, and also usually creates the brief as well. And then the project manager takes it from there and just runs the entire project and the entire day-to-day of the project with you guys. So what's your interaction with copywriters like? What's like the day-to-day of you chatting to copywriters?
So I'm in constant contact. No, as I say, I might be the day-to-day contact, but actually you probably will be in contact or would be in contact with me more often than not. So I check in with our writers most days, if not most weeks. If you've been on holiday or anything like that, I tend to I would drop them a message when they get back. So I just basically communicate with the writers and manage their workload. So I can coordinate between the different team members to ensure that all the deliverables are well, firstly created. So that's whether the brief from the account manager is then sent on to the writer, or the actual piece of writing is written up by the copywriter, and proofread and obviously delivered on time and on brief. That's kind of what I do. And then I would also monitor and manage the performance of writers. So if something hasn't gone quite right, or if it's gone really well, I'll be the one to let the writers know.
Cool. So basically, in other words, it means that mainly you will be chatting to, reporting to, in communication with the project managers throughout your project with the agency. So you really should make sure that you work really well with the project manager and that you develop a super good relationship with them on a personal level as well, if possible, because while the person who first finds you or approaches you might be the account manager, when it comes to winning more gigs with that agency, the project manager will have a huge say. They will have the main say on whether, on whether
I'm the gatekeeper. The
she
gatekeeper to the projects.
She is. So if they didn't like working with you, you might not get another job with that agency. If they loved working with you and everything went, really, really well, then you're much more likely to get more and more work through that agency. So I think the next question is quite obvious. What are you looking for when you're working with a copywriter? What makes the perfect copywriter for you? How would you describe your perfect?
Well, if I was looking for my perfect copywriter, I feel like I'm on blind date. But our most successful copywriters, or those who we use, I should say, on an ongoing regular basis, they may not all be experts in the same thing. Well, that's probably the best part, is that they aren't all experts in the same thing, but they all have very similar traits. And that they respond in a timely manner, they meet deadlines, they aren't afraid to ask questions or flag problems. There's nothing worse than sitting on a problem for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then when the project comes around, suddenly I get a barrage of questions asking, where's this and what's that, and I don't have access to that. And as well, one of the most important things is that they can all take constructive feedback. We don't have any divas. There are no divas. And they're all honest. I'd like to think they are.
Yeah. But they better be.
So
they better be.
They better be.
Yeah, I think there's some really good points there. So first of all, let's talk about time, because I think that maintaining deadlines and meeting deadlines and responding in a timely manner is super important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think that when that doesn't happen, that puts so much stress on us. Obviously, we will never work with a copywriter again if they miss the deadline. Obviously, if something terrible happened and there's a need, or you're ill or anything like that, and you need to move the deadline, just make sure you communicate with the project manager. Don't just let it slide, because
communication is definitely key. I know I hate saying this, but it's a two-way street. You can't just expect us to give and give and give and to give nothing back. We really need to be, as I say, honest and open with one another, because there's nothing worse than it getting to the day of the deadline and then suddenly getting a message on Fleep from a writer saying, oh, can I just ask a question about this? And it's integral to the whole project. And once, especially on larger projects, if one thing holds it up, that means the whole project's held up. So
yeah, definitely. And that brings us to the next point of always make sure that you read the brief on the day that you get the brief. Read through all the materials that day or the day after, even if you have a month, even if the deadline's in a month, make sure you read the brief, make sure you go through all supporting materials and ask all your questions in one go the next day.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Definitely. There's nothing worse than getting questions in dribs and drabs either. So make sure you read that brief and make sure you ask all the questions in one go, because in all honesty, I am busy. A project manager will be busy, and trying to keep track of all the questions. If one thing drops and it's, as I say, integral to the project, then it could be the difference between having to rewrite an entire page of copy and getting it approved. So
Yeah.
All in one go.
And also think about how it looks like from the client side. If you had a whole month with a brief and you asked a question the day before, it looks like you really kind of put it off. It looks like maybe you haven't put enough attention into it as you should have. So yeah, always make sure to ask all questions, ask them in one go. I would say, try to remember that the project manager and the client are super busy with other stuff. So use the time that you have with them, or try and use their time as smartly as you can.
Yeah.
However, that being said, I think it's also really important to create kind of like a fun, friendly, bouncy relationship with the project
We're
manager.
not strictly business. I like to get to know the writers and get to know their individual personalities. And obviously that should come out in your writing as well to an extent, so that we know who to go to for lifestyle pieces and tech pieces and finance pieces. Because a lot of the clients that we work with, they don't want stuffy suit and tie written up pieces. They want a bit of personality, and if you don't have it, then it's difficult to then sell it to the client.
Yeah, so I think the more we get to know you and the more that you show your personality to us and you develop that personal relationship with us, the more we'll be able to match you up with the best projects for you, because we always try to match up between the personality of the writer and the personality of the brand. And obviously the more we know you and your situation, when you like to work, whether you have children or not, and therefore you need to work a little bit later in the day, that would be really helpful for us to make sure that we get that perfect project for you.
Definitely.
So yeah, definitely try and let your personality shine. We love it, really. So cool. Now, all right, we're going to touch on maybe a little bit of a touchy subject here, but I know most of our copywriters will be creatives, and creatives kind of hate words like process, for example. But it's really important, and following a process is really important. So please stick with us while Darryl explains to us what the process is of a copywriting project within an agency, from the get-go of being approached and up until the final draft. But please stick with us, because I think it's going to really, it's going to clarify a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a good insight. It's a good insight to have from an agency perspective.
Exactly. And how things work, how things are going to work for you.
Definitely.
Yeah, go on. I'm going to connect my charger. Sorry, guys.
That's right. So once we get a briefing from a client, the project pod meet and discuss the deliverables. So the account manager tends to lead the conversation, because they'll obviously have read over the brief and know the client really well, or as well as they possibly can do at that stage. They'll then assign the appropriate writer to the account, and we'll contact them regarding their availability and send them over the brief and see if they're interested, along with any style guidelines and the pay, most importantly. I then step in and take over from the account manager once that's all agreed, and I set the deliverables and deadlines with the writer. So once that first piece of work is given to me, so we've set the deadline, you meet it, it's all good. The content editor, Sam, our lovely Sam, she'll then check the content against the brief and client guidelines and make sure that it's all up to scratch. I'll initiate to the client, asking them to collate their feedback. We have some really good feedback guidelines that makes it really clear to the client what they need to give us and when. And if they have any amends, they'll most likely comment on the document, because we use Google Docs, or they'll maybe send me an email with a bit more general feedback. I'll then relay the feedback to the writer and set up a deadline for the second draft if necessary, or mark it as approved. And we'll probably go through those stages sort of once or twice to, until we get it completely right for the client. or signs it off, and then we move on to the next piece or the next project.
So let's take an example. So let's say we're writing, sorry, a web page, not web page. We're writing website copy for an entire website. Then you're likely to be approached by an account manager who will kind of tell you how many pages, how much you're going to get paid. And then you will move over to Darryl, who will set up the deadlines. Obviously, she will always ask what are the deadlines that are suitable for you as well and work it out with you. We would usually always start with what we like to call a tone of voice checker. So we'll always write like a little piece of copy just to make sure that the client is kind of happy with the direction we're going to go in. And then we're going to start working page by page according to specific deadlines. And whenever we get feedback from the client, Darryl's gonna relay that, well, hopefully it will be Darryl, but it might be a different project manager if you work with another agency. You'll be super lucky to work with Darryl, but if it's another project manager, I guess it's okay. So she will then relay the information over to you. The feedback, you will work on the feedback, send the second draft until we have a final draft ready. Usually, well, at least for us, we include 2 rounds of feedback and one round of tweaks with each work that we provide for a client. And obviously we pay the writers accordingly as well. Let's talk a little bit about feedback, because I think that's really important. So when we send feedback to our writers, we usually try and kind of sugarcoat it as much as we can. But sometimes you will get feedback which will kind of feel to you like it's taking away your own creativity, or like the client didn't really like the direction, or the specific phrase that you really, really loved, that's the phrase that the client doesn't like. So you have to learn to deal with that. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely, because I mean, whether feedback is good, bad, or ugly, we'll always make sure that it's not brash or abrasive. We always make sure that I know that we mentioned earlier about a positive spin, but it's not even that. It's more just making sure that it's fair.
Yeah.
And obviously, before it even gets to you, if we feel that it's unjust, we'll go back to the client and argue your corner for you. And that's part of my job, and Russell, our account manager, that's part of our job, is we make sure that if we feel that what we've given is meeting the brief, is doing everything they need it to, then yeah, we'll definitely fight your corner. 100%. We have your back.
I think that's a really good point, because for us as an agency from the get-go, it was really important for us that we have our copywriters back, and we fight their corner, just as you said. And so we always pay on time. That's for sure. No matter what, on the 20th of the month, you're gonna get paid, and you know that that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, and part of Darryl and Russell's job role itself is to maintain that good relationship with freelancers and make sure that we're on their side, and that they're in a way they care about your well-being a lot, about the freelancers' well-being. Unfortunately, that's not really true for all agencies. Some agencies will work a bit differently. And yeah, so there will be better agencies to work for and not so great agencies to work for. What do you think, Darryl, that differentiates between a good agency to work for and a not so great one? Obviously, sometimes you won't have a choice at the beginning. You will work even if it's not the best agency, but just so you guys know.
But then you'll learn, and it'll teach you kind of, unfortunately, it's a bit of a harsh lesson to learn, but I think the first thing that'll separate is communication. Mm-hmm. So you'll know a bad agency from a good agency from the moment they get in touch with you, or you get in touch with them. So whether it's them giving you a really loose brief and saying that's all you've got to go on, and then coming back with horrible feedback, or whether it's not being in touch with you at all for weeks and weeks and weeks, I think that there's a wide variety of communication issues. Because I know communication agencies are also often well known for their communication issues and things like that. You'd also need to look at how an agency treats their staff. So I know that Nitzan, you just mentioned this, but obviously we pay our writers and our suppliers on time. Any agency that withholds money from you, whether you've whether the project's finished or not, is not a good agency. You should get paid for the work that you do on a monthly basis. And I think as well, that'll then come down to you having your terms and conditions, everything like that sorted, which I know that we talk in the course about, but that's super important. And I think as well, clients. If an agency takes on all and any clients, then you know that they're not, I don't want to say they're not, they're obviously not of quality, but I think any agency that doesn't vet their clients before bringing them on is a big warning sign for me.
Yeah,
definitely.
So if you get a lot of nightmare clients from an agency, maybe they're not. Maybe you'd like to look for other agencies to work with as well. I think again, like the money thing is just so important. You have, and I know that sometimes when we're starting out, and I know that the hard way, because the amount of times we weren't paid is just like, it's ridiculous. At the beginning, not now. At the beginning, you're kind of like, oh, it will be all right. They'll pay me eventually, but they won't. And it's really like, it's your right to get paid for the work you've done. So make sure that happens.
Do.
A client doesn't pay you on time, don't work with them again. I know it's hard to say. It's harder said than done, but it's just not worth it. In the end, the worst thing in the world is to have done this huge work and then not get paid for it in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
I think another point is how much that agency expects you to communicate with their client. For us, we take the majority of client communication, so you can focus only on writing and only on your craft. And we take over client relations, we take over kind of negotiation with them, or if anything kind of didn't work out quite well, it will be Darryl and it will be Russell and the account manager and the project manager who mediate it. So you don't have to deal with client complaints, you don't have to deal with client relations, you can just focus in. And if that agency, now obviously sometimes you will need to jump on a call with the client because they need to brief you more precisely or anything like that, but if the agency expects you to handle client relations, I mean, it really depends. Some agencies just send you the work. They don't have project managers, they don't have account managers, and you know that in advance, and that's fine. That's completely cool. But if it's a proper marketing copywriting agency that has project managers and account managers, you want to make sure that they're the ones who are in charge of the client relations, so that you can focus on your craft. I think that's really, really important.
Agreed. Super important.
So what do you think, on a completely different note, well, I guess it's kind of related, but what do you think are the main challenges that beginner writers should know that they're going to face when working with agencies?
I think the big one is that we're often seen as an agency as the middleman. So you have to adhere to our way of working, or any other agency's way of working, which might not be the way that you're used to. Especially as a freelancer, you have a lot of freedom, and if you're then being asked, to do certain things by certain times, that can feel a bit, it can feel a bit like it's infringing on what you do in your creativity. Even using apps and technology you're not really familiar with, can also kind of be a bit jarring. It also might mean that you make less money than usual when you work with an agency, because you're not actually working with the clients direct. And obviously, as an agency, we charge a premium, and then we take our markup and our share of the project fee before you get the writer's fee too. But I think on the flip side of that as well is that it means that we're the buffer.
Yeah.
So it means that, as a writer, you don't have to deal with all the faff and the back and forth with a client. You don't have to, if there's any issues, as you said, Nitzan, you don't have to raise them. We're there to do that. I think as well, maybe organization. You have to be a bit more organized when you work with an agency, because we'll be chasing you for deadlines, we'll be chasing you for NDAs, invoices. So you need to make sure that you don't miss any invoice submission dates, that you make sure you get paid. But as we say, we've never not paid a writer since we began. But on the other hand, our agency knows when something is due, so we'll give you a nudge if an invoice is due or something isn't right, or oh, do you remember that this deadline that we briefly discussed last week is coming up? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think as well, there's the added benefit of working with an agency. I know it's challenges, but the added benefit is that when we get a job in that's too small for us or doesn't meet our minimum project deliverables, we often pass the work on to our freelancers so they can deal with the client direct. So you've also got the chance that we might actually put a client your way that you end up working with for years or months or get a really good project out of. So I think there's challenges, but there's also a lot of benefits.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that whilst you have to be a little organized, and the other hand, like you have a project manager working for you, well, not for you, but working with you in order to make sure that you hit all those deadlines, and pesters you and tells you on the Friday in advance and on the day and reminds you all the time. And you have an organizational expert at your side.
Yeah.
Again, it is true that you might get paid a little bit less than you would working directly with clients, but it also means that you don't have to deal with the client.
Yeah, it's less hassle. I just think, it's the best of both worlds.
It's less hassle. You're likely to get, especially if we're talking about like smaller clients, you're likely to get paid much sooner when you work with an agency as well. So that's, I think, another benefit. So there are challenges, there are benefits of working with an agency or working with a client, and you guys are going to find it out for yourself really soon.
Exciting.
So we're kind of coming to the end of our chat today. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you enjoy about working with freelancers?
I think, as cheesy as it sounds, it'd be the variety of people that I get to work with. So whether it's in person over our Fleep chats or on video calls, I get to build relationships with them all, and it's been so far so good. And we've even created a community around our freelancers, letting them interact with one another. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's one of the best things. Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree. We have our chatting tool, which is called Fleep, which is a little bit like Slack, but not really. And we have this thread, like the TCC random thread, where we have all of our freelance writers, all of our in-house writers, and all of our team together, and we just have super jokes in there all the time.
Yeah, whether it's memes, jokes, videos, Instagram posts. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I really like it, and as I say, it just helps cement that relationship that we've got with you, the agency has with you as well. So yeah,
definitely. And I think it creates for them this community that they don't have anywhere else, really. Because most of them do work from home. Well, now we all work from home, but in normal times they all work from home and on their own most of the days. So having that community, having that team, even though they're not in-house, they're freelancers, they're still part of the team, and they're part of something bigger, which I think they all really like as well.
Definitely.
Cool. Thank you so much for chatting to me about this today, and opening up the world of project management and how projects are actually run, because I think throughout the course we talk a lot about how to approach agencies and how to win gigs with agencies, but we don't actually talk about, or we don't talk enough maybe about what it's actually like, what a project actually looks like. I hope now our community copywriters have a bit more of an insight into that. And if you have any other questions, please let us know. And we'd love to run another one of these sessions
definitely
as well, and ask any questions you have. So thank you so much, Darryl.
No problem.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.